Yeah, I lost the camera before. I apologize for that. Okay, so yeah, so I'm gonna this is part two, and we're gonna go through it. I'm gonna supplement the information. But is it? I mean, I'm not lecturing, and I really am just sharing information. I really am trying to curry interest with the people that I'm friends with. I'm so grateful to be friends with these people who've been in church for a long time, and who contributed bits and pieces here on my board. We need more of it, though. Just the more input, the better. One of the things, yeah, I'm involved in like serious legal stuff. Again, not my fault. And also, what my effort is protective. I'm trying to stop abuses from occurring to people I care about, including people in the church who might be afflicted or have had loss and so forth in their families and all that. And I'm not really fully supported. I'm certainly not financially supported, and I think that's kind of a shame. But again, I don't know how to do it, so I'm reaching out to you folks to see where you can help. Um, it's good to interact. It's good to that I have communicants on my side to support me in my on my learning curve, but I don't have as much of a learning curve to overcome as I think some people might think for one reason or another. I'm as advanced as the other communicants, but there's loss because of how the mantle needs to not because of how because of the mantle. There's loss because there was loss initiated against the church by the fallen when I was injured, and during a course of years of violent crime. So that needs to be overcome, but we have to do it in a way in which we understand how to help. And for instance, if I can't help now but could help enormously, given a bit of help from each of you or some of you, then it's paramount that we figure out how to go about putting me in a position where I can actually do my job, because you'll only benefit from it. I personally guarantee it, as a matter of fact, that if I know you, then you're in the church, and I'm properly supported and not sacrificing too much. If it's a balance and it's equitable, then I can help, and we will be friends forever, or whatever it is that you need. But yeah, so that's the situation. But it was interesting to me, and I restate it sort of to share, as again not as a lecture or as an entreaty even, but isn't it interesting that that came through the system that Mother and Mark said that? The only thing at that point, she said, when they discovered it, was that you are at this position. Sorry, your life was so horrible and that it's so afflicted, and that we helped to stave off some of the after effect, but couldn't fully balance it for you. That's the nature of the game. If you're kind of a seventh rounder and more like Jermaine, and you're trying to bring compassion, right mindfulness to a church that is properly oriented, which CUT is, but organizationally, God sort of ordained that it fail at certain points, because that's how organizations function. Again, referring to my safety professional society, right? It's like you have to be a guild, and you have to think in terms of the best interest of your other members, and make sacrifices. And I know that we all balance for each other. In a way, we're different from the fifth rounders, in that we're a later round, and it's different. But we can't always get help from the fifth round, so it's problematic. But they're not insurmountable challenges. It just requires creativity, and I would just be overwhelmed if people really took an actual interest in refinancing and turning their lives in a different direction. I'm not saying around. I'm not saying turn your life around and quote unquote find God. I'm saying we know about God, we know about the alchemy, we're advanced communicants, and we know that there's trouble. Let's solve the problem by addressing the trouble, and that means doing one or two things I think different with personal finances periodically. So the thing with the ranch and everybody moving to the ranch, right? Don't sell off everything that you have until you have nothing left. But if you need to sell off components of your wealth in order to help yourself, but also other people within the church, do that. Do it in a way that is in which you're properly compensated and protected. But let me have like an understanding of where I might fit into that, because that is really how to solve some of these problems. And really, we're involved in a revolution. I mean, Mother will say it as well. So it's important that people sort of follow along periodically. But let me try to find a little bit of information about Bridge to Freedom. I'll take a look at it right now. Yeah, the thing about death and reporting death and all, it's really funny because I remember at one point I was younger, and people over the course of so many years have periodically, and I think because I'm an actor, assumed that I'm the guy when there's a funeral at age 19 or 20. I'm the guy to get up there in front of everybody and preach, even though at the time when I was 20 years old, I was entirely naive, like a child, like everybody else is at that age, and was relied upon to deliver information that was totally foreign to me. But at one point, someone told me, rather, I was enlisted by a church to give this speech about there shall be no more death. And yeah, I'm sorry to be a reporter of bad tidings, but I am more like a Rastafarian. I don't believe in death, not really. I believe that periodically, though, someone in my position who reads about death all day long, my friends are dying, and probably because of my position, my unique position, but also because of the fallen. And the problem that I mentioned before with being trafficked and it not being prosecuted and resolved, those problems in the past really have to be resolved in order for the present to be healed. That's a reality, and I don't want to put it in. Well, it's not. I'm not really putting it in medical terms when I say heal in that context. But right, it's a lot of medical abuse against me that's occurred over the years that ends up being a net loss to the church, believe it or not. So resolving that is actually hugely important, as stated. So creative ways to do it. But let me take a look at, and I apologize for bringing up the loss of Geraldine and Vicente, but this was years back. I think sometimes when there's loss, people don't want to hear it. Someone at church actually supported me on that the other day. My, years back, a cat had passed, one of my beloved cats had passed away untimely, and I was told, well, balance the karma, balance it, mentally do we say cremation at church, and really, when people die, I find that what we really say is, what is what we say? Victory. I've seen that before. People, and not recently, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, I haven't really heard reporting of deaths from the church. But in the past, early on in my involvement, someone would say so-and-so passed, and you'd see the word victory. And that would be it. That would be the entire quote-unquote funeral. And we don't do funerals at CUT. We do cremations. And really, that's a spiritual concept, not a physical cremation as much as a spiritual cremation, where we put the individual into the flame. It's either on call or the violet flame. I'm not sure which. Either one. Oh well, they used to put bodies on Atlantis. They used to put bodies directly into the flame of Encall. So in other words, my aunts want to call and say, so and so died. It's a funeral. I won't do funerals. I don't like them. I don't always believe it when people tell me that someone's died. I'm traumatized when I hear about death, and I don't support it. Cremations, I think you should pray in the moment for that soul and to deal with the reality of the situation if you've lost someone. But do it the right way. Do it in a way in which you respect your own heart, you respect that soul and the memory of the soul. You don't necessarily have to go to a 3-day wake, or I think they call it Shiva in Judaism, all those funerary rituals. I don't think you need to do that. I think that being a good Buddhist and doing cremation only is fabulous. I really do. I really support that. And the flame of Encall as well. And to aim for a deathless world as well. That doesn't mean that the light bearers are going to have to submit to the laggards, however. So when I mention death, I apologize right away. And I try to avoid the topic as much as I can, but it's difficult. It's difficult. You have to be conscientious and respectful. Oh, but one of the people in the church, one of the family members, I believe, asked, I lost my cat, and don't talk about it. But there were people in my life who were close to me at the time, where it would have been okay for me to enlist their help spiritually and emotionally by sharing the reality. And I still go back and forth about the utility of doing that. When you lose an animal, for instance, and a friend of yours has been to your apartment or has traveled and seen your animal and interacted with your animal, he or she probably loves that animal too. But like mourning an animal, it can be helpful if the person, I suppose, who has lost the animal is in need and needs their partner or their spouse, their husband or wife, to acknowledge that there's a problem. Right, that makes sense to me to an extent. But what you don't want to do, and it was revealed to me, you don't want to lay it on someone without protecting that person in advance. Because really, it's a form of, if you do that, you just call up Joe, your friend Joe Smith, to say that Scraps has died, and you don't pray in advance about it. It's not really. It can be ruinous to Joe's reality because he also, not only through the heart, but yes, through the heart, absolutely through the heart, but also through identification, identified with that animal. And if you cut that person off from the reality of that animal being in the world, quote unquote, it hits the wrong part of the chakras. So you want to be extremely cautious when you disclose something like that. And truly, in the next round, we won't have a pet loss because it will be cured through the arrival of Germain in Aquarius. That's the reality of the situation as well. And people who don't support that are not doing the right thing biblically. So I want everybody to be aware of that. Animals are not secondary. Companion animals, when there's loss of a companion animal, there should be a signal sent. There should be prayers, decrees. That individual spirit of the animal needs to be protected. Those sylphs need to make it to wherever they need to be, where they're present and so forth. So let's all keep that in mind moving forward as well. And I'll link you to my elementals video additionally. But yeah, so I'm entirely open to dealing with the church and supporting it. And for those of you who are 20-year members, 25-year members, it's very important to people that Mother's legacy is respected. That's true too, and also that the information is respected. And you're right. The best way to respect the information, the integrity of our inner temple information, which are the specific sutras that are basically selected by the messengerial mantle and are still in the process of unfoldment, that our holy information, which is holy and part of a temple, is not tainted by fallen information, outside information, other churches. Other churches don't always contribute the right way, including some of the Buddhist paths and people approaching me who want me to study their form of Buddhism. It's not time. It's not time for me to do that. Same thing with Urantia. I don't have a problem with Urantia beyond the fact that don't discount my work and my mission, not only as a chaplain, but also as a violent crime survivor who's trying to get out of here, by saying that I should read your material because I don't always have access to it. Really, Mother's information is really always on the top of my desk. And irrespective of whether or not you think that that's a cool setup or whatever, it's unfortunately the best thing for me personally, physically, mentally, emotionally. I don't know what I would do without the dispensation directly from Guruma. And Urantia, let me give Urantia a prop though, and that is I have periodically seen the system give snapshots. Actually, it happened to me one time. The Urantia information, I was so overwhelmed with it, I ran in the other direction. It's like when people started first trying to pass me Temple of the Presence, I looked at them like, this looks nothing like church. I couldn't find myself within it. Urantia, it's similar, but one time they showed me a snapshot of material when I needed holy information, and it came from Urantia, and it had to do with the seraphic bands, and I saved that information because it's quote-unquote good information. So I'm not saying that Urantia is fallen. I'm saying it's not for me at this point in time, and if you can respect that as a Urantia practitioner, that'd be great. With hesitation, I put Urantia on my board. I link to Urantia groups because I don't want to leave people out. But I'm not a Urantia minister. I'm a Church Universal and Triumphant minister. It's like when I say it to my mother's constantly saying, "Get to church, get to church, get to church." I'm not going to the Catholic Church anymore. It doesn't speak to me. anymore. It's a hindrance. In some respects, it's an actual hindrance until there's integration. Why? Because it's not the word. You have to have the living word. The living word. Sanatana Dharma is what I call it, but Mark calls it the eternal truth. You gotta have the Holy Spirit within you, and it has to be through the actual unfoldment, not something that resembles the unfoldment, and for certain people at a certain level, not something that is even going to. Sometimes I think dipping into Urantia is helpful, or dipping into Nichiren Buddhism is helpful. It depends, but you also have to respect the word, which is why it's important that religions are respected. I say that religions need to be respected, and that's absolutely true. And I will say that Urantia, and I'm not dissing Urantia. I'm saying people make the mistake. It's funny. A friend of mine said, I never understood. She's a very holy, wonderful person, and she said, I never understood. The one thing that stood out with me after I met you was that you couldn't incorporate Urantia. I said, no, because it's not my thing. It's totally foreign to me when I see it. The mother information, it feels like it's coming directly from my heart. And I can see, and I've been planning for so long that I've been planning, as I said, for over 10 years. So it makes sense when I hear all of the information, the news coming down from there. Yeah, Urantia is an interesting peripheral conversation, but to me, peripheral. So people want me to do Naropa Yoga and to learn there. I don't want to be taught because Mother has said I have father light that needs to disseminate. I'm not in student mode when I'm on the internet, or shouldn't be. I should be I should be transmitting information and not receiving it from other paths. It needs to be this path, which is Guru Chila within CUT. So it's really the best approach to resolving all of these problems. Right. So, but let me take a look to see if I can find Bridge to Freedom. Let me take a look and see what's going on here. Okay, it is. It's too bad that things are always so slow, and that they're trying to show me email, and that's not what I want. I want to get into the Saint Germain Foundation was guided into Ballard. So when you see CSCGF, that's entirely true. As a reminder, that art, some people will put up, be respectful of the fact that we have our own art, or not respectful, conscious of the fact that we have art that's licensed to us, that is sacred art for this church. Now, there's other art. I've seen people become dismissive of the Saint Germain Foundation art, because it has the wrong vibration. But yeah, that's fine to say that. Like when people do their own Germain and they put it up and they want you to worship it or bow to it or whatever, and you're like, well, that's not really my Germain. You're right, it's not your Germain, and I had a problem too. One of my struggles coming into the church was that how to use art and which art was valid and which wasn't. All of those questions, but I think that the Saint Germain Foundation art has more validity and has a higher vibration because they were in our lineage. So I don't always support excluding lineage art. I support excluding fallen art where you can tell it's really demonic, or when you can tell that it's just a church trying to detract from the summit path, or exceeding and detracting from the summit path, even if they have good intentions. That's no good either. But yeah, right, value our art, understand how to work with art, and bhakti yoga. But some of the Saint Germain Foundation art is actually, I think, amazing. Well, let me take a look here, and Bridge to Freedom. Okay. Okay, I think I'm going to post this in a third part. I'm going to take a pause and post it in a third part for you people.